Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Sasheen. Welcome to Tuesday Tea Break, your not even midweek, kind of top of the week space where we gather to hang out, chit chat for about 30 minutes. And normally I would broadcast this, but I wasn't quite sure if I was going to make it today. But I did because I managed to get everything else done. So here we are, top of the week, creating a moat around the chaos that is pretty much everybody's life right now. So, welcome to the party. When you come in, say hi. If you catch the replay, say hi. And let's talk for about 30 minutes about how you're going to move into the next quarter of the year. So, we've come through January, February, March, April is knocking on the door tomorrow. And for people in the US, April means tax season. The tax man has been knocking on the door. Good morning, Wendy. Good to see you. The tax man is knocking on the door. So for a lot of folks, April is hurry up and get the taxes filed. If you're not in the US, but you're a US citizen, it's still hurry up and get your taxes filed. Hey, Laura, welcome to the party. But if you follow my channel, you know that I've been saying um, the first quarter of the year was not the big planning quarter. Don't do anything. Energy was not where it needed to be yet. So think on your plans, but don't act on your plans. And then all of a sudden I said, not all of a sudden, then I started to say, okay, so February rolled around, Lunar New Year popped up, energy began to shift. Now's a good time to get into those plans. All right, so now February has rolled into March. We're about to end the first quarter of the year. And so, what are you thinking for the next quarter of the year? Let's talk about where you want to see yourself in the next 3 months. Because spring has sprung. If you know, we've passed over the vernal equinox, and so we've had the equal day and the equal night. We are now marching firmly into the spring and summer in the northern hemisphere. So what is it that you're starting to plant? This is planting season, right? If you're a gardener, if you spend time, good morning, Michelle. Oh, please stay for as long as you can. But this is planting season. If you're into the gardening, or if you at least like to eat food, you're hoping that people are out there planting so that come harvest time in the fall, we will have some food to eat. But metaphorically speaking, it's also planting season for all of those dreams and goals and ideas that I've been telling you to cultivate, think about, think about, think about. Now it's time to plant. So, what are you thinking about for the next quarter of the year? What do you hope to see happen in 3, 6, and 9 months? What do you hope is on your harvest or in your harvest come the swing back around of the autumnal equinox down in the year when we start pulling things out of the ground so that we have food for winter, right? Because that's how the gardening cycle works. And, we spent some time a few weeks ago getting the garden ready, the actual garden ready, so that we could start planting when the last frost hit. Well, guess what, y'all? I don't know that we're going to have to worry about a last frost because it hasn't frozen since January around here. That's the last really cold weather that we had, like single digit weather or even below freezing weather. So the gardens, though we have, tilled them up and are just kind of where we were waiting for this time of year. The weather has been very cooperative for the gardening people because it's been really, really warm here. But I want you to think about what you can plant differently this year. Because as you all know, one of the reasons I started this Women in Transition channel, if you go back on my page and you see the pinned video, which is the new rules of engagement, that that sprang out of a moment that has continued to be a moment. And at some point, I knew that we would have to begin shifting the conversation to talking about what life really is going to need to look like for you to not just be happy and surviving, or at least sort of surviving, but to be able to thrive in a world that has unequivocally changed now. It's unequivocally changed. And because it's unequivocally changed, what we planted last year, we may not either need to or want to or be able to or desire to plant this year, right? The harvest might need to look different come the fall. And what we plant now is going to show up in the latter part of the year. So it is really important, I think, that we decide what we're going to plant in our physical and metaphysical and metaphorical gardens, so that we do reap a harvest that feels more abundant and that feels more livable and not just hard scrabble survival mode. All right, y'all are talking. Um, that is a big, big shift in your life, leaving my two jobs so I can care for my dad full time and not have to balance work and caregiving. That's a big shift. That's a huge shift. Caring for being part of that sandwich generation, in that sandwich generation as well, where we have potentially, if you have children, and then also aging parents, like that's a huge shift. And having the space so that you can care for your father and not have to be pulled in so many different directions is that's an amazing space to be in, and I wish you and your father all the best. I love my dad. He's yeah, he's my rock. So um right, and it's clear that a lot of the world that we lived in even 2 years ago just is different now, right? It's just different now. So what is it that you want to be in your life now? What do you want to see happen come the fall of the year when you're ready to harvest? So I've been thinking about this. And so back a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I had started a new writing group. Um, I am an academic. I've been a college professor for many, many years, over 20. And I write in a certain way, but I've always had a desire to write fiction novels, science fiction, fantasy, mystery novels was kind of my outlet. And so as I have thought about what I wanted the next phase of my life to look like, woman in transition, hello, I realized that what I would like to stop doing is being beholden to one path and one identity and embrace a different identity that's kind of been on the back burner for a while. So I started the Writers Room group on Facebook, which is right now just a small labor of love that I'm cultivating and building. But I'm building a community of writers, of fiction writers, to find a place to communicate and collaborate and support each other. Because just like this channel, the Women in Transition podcast that I do every week, my goal has been since I started many years ago, but especially in the past couple of years, is to create a space for women to collaborate and communicate and elevate each other to whatever it is that they feel like they want to do next. And I've been very focused on Gen X women because I'm a Gen X woman. And we are at a crossroads in our time that is very different from anybody else's crossroads. Very, very, very different. And hopefully, fingers crossed, generations that come behind us also won't be at this crossroads when they reach this age. It'll look vastly different and maybe it might be a little bit easier. Because Gen X, we've lived through a whole lot of crossroads. Like we're the generation that knows how to read a map and use Google Maps. That's how diverse we are, right? So, as I was thinking about what I want the harvest of the year to look like, I decided to start planting some seeds. When I told you all to start thinking about that, working the plan that you've been planning the work for, I too am starting to work that plan and put some pieces into place. And I'm still team get your passport. I'm still team it may be time to relocate your life to some place where you can thrive and survive and not just survive. I am still team the grass may be greener on the other side and don't let folks convince you otherwise because they might be standing on astroturf. Right? I am still team all of those things. And also team it's time to plant and it's time to make sure that what you want to see come up in the fall gets planted in the ground in this quarter, in this next quarter. Um, it is surprisingly rewarding to be a caregiver. Absolutely. I was just having this conversation with my dad yesterday when I went over to see him because we don't live very far apart. And how nice it is that sometimes family can be compensated for caregiving. I'm not sure where you live, but I do know that in many states, family members can be compensated as caregivers. And I love that that law passed. And like I said, I don't know if it's in many states. I know it's here in the state that my father lives in. And it was in New York where I moved from. they would be advertising it all over the radios all the time, that if you have a caregiver or if you have a family member who needs a caregiver and you're that caregiver, right? Like there's compensation for that, which I think is so important because it is one of those very rewarding things that can also be very financially hard to do if there's no other income coming in. And so I really love that, like I said, Missouri, where my dad lives, does it. New York does it. I don't know if Arizona does it, but I hope they do because that will also make it so much easier to relax into the caregiving role, um, with that additional support that can come from some of those state agencies, which I just think is, yeah, I think it's awesome. And so I hope that you're able to take advantage of that down in Arizona. I don't know if Arizona has that policy in place, but I hope they do. I hope they do because, like I said, it's so important and it's an amazing gift to be asked to care for a parent who loved you and who you love, right? Like I get that not all parents are great. I'm not gonna Pollyanna it, but when you have a good relationship and it is your turn or your time to help care for someone who's cared and loved you your whole life, I don't think there's a higher calling than that. So, but yeah, oh, please look into that. Like I said, it was so funny that you mentioned that. I was just having this conversation with my father yesterday about how nice it is that when the time comes, if he needs full-time caregiving, one of his children could become his paid caregiver. It's not, I don't think it's a lot of money, but I do think it's very helpful. And I know that they do it here, or at least there in Missouri where he lives, and I know they did it in New York where I moved from, and they would advertise it all over the radios, which I always thought was really funny. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense if you can keep people in their homes, if you could keep people together with their families, that kind of care is really important for quality of life. And if the state can help keep that going, and keep that connection because it prolongs life. It makes health issues easier to handle. It makes the comfort level is so much greater. Like I'm all for these programs, and I don't even have someone who needs it, and I'm all for these programs. Oh, Michelle, have fun out in the world today. Take care of yourself out there. Don't let the mass don't let the craziness get to you, and we will absolutely see you next week. Yep, I'm back from spring break, so we'll see you next week. Yes, right. You're saving Medicare a bundle. Like I said, I don't know why every state doesn't do it because it seems like a no-brainer when it comes to elder care. There's a shortage of qualified caregivers anyway out there in the world, and who doesn't know and I think if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, but I believe you can get additional care on top of the person. Bye, Michelle. On top of your family caregiver, if you need, I think, more advanced care. I haven't looked into it fully. I know that my mother, for those of you who don't know, my older brother passed away last year, and he had been sick for a long time. And so, but our mother, was his caregiver, and she was paid by the state to care for her disabled son. And I know it's not quite the same, but those programs for caregiving, I wish every state would allow um, family members who could and wanted to provide care and comfort for their loved ones and not feel financially like they're gonna drown if they do so. Because yeah, I just, I think it's a better solution to the shortage problem of caregivers, and also because who everyone wants to be at home. Home is where we're comfortable. Home is where we're happiest. So anyway, we're going to cover you with grace and love and peace as you transition from working to being a full-time caregiver, and wish all the best for you and your dad. That's so cool. I love my dad. So it's very cool. So for in terms of um, planting for the fall, what is it that you hope to see in the fall? What are the buckets of your life that you hope to put something into now and see, some trees sprouting come October, November? And I say the buckets because, I talk about the magical seven, the buckets of your life. where you want to make sure you've got all your things covered, your finances, your health, your physical, mental, emotional, social, because we can't forget the social. Um, and I'm missing one. I'm missing one. But each of those buckets needs for you to put a seed in it now. It needs for you to say, here's what I would like to see for my mental health so that in October, I'm feeling just as stable, just as happy, just as cared for. Here's what I need to do for my physical health so that as the year wears on, I will be doing X, Y, and Z. For those of you who are on the perimenopausal journey, this is a really important bucket for all of us to make sure that we are putting some seeds into that we're going to be able to pull from in October because as we already know, this thing called perimenopause is a decade-long journey. For some people, it's not for everyone, but it can last a long time. And so the mental and physical buckets are really important every year. We've got to make sure that we are putting enough into them so that we have something to pull from in the times when we just, when it's just hard, when it's really hard. And I'm on Threads. If you haven't followed me, I'm on Threads, Dr. Sasheen on Threads. And there's always some interesting conversations about the issue of going through perimenopause and all of the stuff, the things that we didn't know, right? Gen X is talking about it because our mothers didn't. They weren't allowed to. There was no space in the world for conversations around issues of perimenopause and all the weird symptoms and all the strange happenings. But one of the things that I love about the conversation is so here's what we know, the sharing of the knowledge, right? Like here's what we know, here's what the science is saying, here's the anecdotal on the ground evidence from women who are living through it, right? Who are going through it, who can say, yes, this worked for me. And another woman might go, that absolutely did not work for me at all. But the nice thing is you can find your tribe of people who are sharing similar experiences with you. And so I think one of the buckets that we have to make sure that we fill is the social bucket, the community bucket, where you're not so isolated and alone, where you're doing your thing, yes, but there is a place where you check in and say, hey, I have this weird symptom. Is anybody else having this weird symptom? And someone goes, absolutely, I have this weird symptom too. For example, did you know? I did not know this, but I do now that itchy ears is a symptom of perimenopause. Now, I learned this months ago because one of the things that start my ears itch like crazy sometimes. Luckily, not all the time, but like crazy. So one day I happened to post randomly on Threads about the itchy ears and how I was so shocked that it's a symptom of perimenopause. I think that thread got 10,000 replies to it because so many women are like, yes. I have the itchy ears. Oh my gosh, I have that too. And then women who had been through it, who are a little further down the road, right, said yes. And here's some remedies that we tried, right? Here's some things that we did that helped with the itchy ears. What I've discovered, or what I keep hearing, is that Benadryl on a Q-tip, if they're really itchy, can be a lifesaver. So I run everything past my doctor because I trust her judgment and I know she has my best interests at heart and we're a team, we're working together. But I also understand that anecdotal evidence is just as important for lived experience, right? For people saying, hey, that's me and here's something that I did and if you want to try it. So luckily my itchy ear and it's just like right behind where you can like you can't get your finger in there, right? It's like right there and so you see me do this sometimes, it's because my inner ears are actually literally itching, literally itching. Um, and they say you're not supposed to stick Q-tips in your ears. So I rub like this, like that, and I hope it stops the itching, and it does for the most part. But here's the thing: I thought it was just allergies, y'all. I thought it was just allergies, even though this was not an allergic response I'd ever had. But I was like, okay, whatever. No, it's actually one of the symptoms. And so then I go down the rabbit hole of why does the ear begin to itch? And it's a cartilage issue and it's got to do with the estrogen levels and all that kind of jazz. And so all that to say, when you're thinking about how to plant your garden for the rest of the year, I want you to make sure that you're filling your community bucket, your social bucket, because I think the pandemic isolated us enough that we still haven't quite gotten out of the idea that we're still pretty much islands unto ourselves. And we're not islands because, as we know from many a movie, people on islands don't tend to do very well for long periods of time without somebody else on that island to pass the time of day with, to help them do life with. So we have to figure out ways to build community. Now, I say this, and it's really important. I say this strongly that you need to build community and social and fill your social bucket with people who love and support and protect you. Please do not fill your social bucket just because you are lonely with people who are toxic and bad for you. Do not do that. We are past that point. We are no longer engaging in those relationships that will suck us dry and eat our harvest and not even share it with us. We will not do that anymore. What we want are people who value and respect us and protect us. And in turn, we will value, respect, and protect them, right? Because it's really easy sometimes to get caught up in the moment or a movement and not realize that you're not getting anything out of this. You're giving a whole lot, but you're not getting anything in return. You're still just as isolated and you're still just as by yourself all the time. And you still don't have anybody who really listens to you or supports you or hangs out or wants to hang out with you or shares your interests, right? And so I do think that as the world has shifted a great deal in just a short amount of time, it is even more important that you not only find people like minded, but people who like to support as well. I did a video, I might link to it, about seeking out the people who seek out you, right? The helpers of the world need to seek out other helpers of the world because the users are always looking for the helpers, right? The people who like to use people, they're always looking for the helpers, but the helpers need to seek out the helpers so that they can help each other. Because that's one of the nice perks about being a helper is that you'll not only help others, but if you surround yourself with helpers, they will help you. So um, I just want people to, especially women, to crave the community that craves them back in the healthiest ways possible. And to lean in to planting those seeds so that your community grows in such a way that it feels like it supports you. Nobody wants a garden full of things you don't want to eat, right? Like, why would you want a garden full of things that you want to eat? So you plant this garden, you put all these seeds out, and you plant all this stuff, and it starts to come up, and you realize, I don't want to eat any of this. I don't like that. I don't like peas. Why did I plant peas? Right? I don't like squash. Why did I plant squash? Great question. Why did you? Don't do that. Don't plant don't plant seeds that you don't want to harvest. Oddly enough, also stemmed from a conversation I was having with my dad yesterday about not doing things that don't actually make you feel good. The nice thing about talking to people who are in their 80s is they have a very clear perspective on life, right? They're like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't want to do it. And what are you going to tell them? You have to? No, no, they actually don't. But it's not planting seeds in places that you don't want to be planted, which, I'm team relocate if you're not happy. I've moved all over this country. I've been off the continent, the continental United States. I've lived in the Caribbean. The bloom where you're planted assumes that where you're planted can allow you to bloom. And that is not always the case. Sometimes the place that you are planted no longer serves you. The soil is toxic. And no amount of cover crop is going to make it beneficial for you to stay. And that is okay too. And that is why planting your community buckets, making sure that your community bucket is filled up and your social bucket is filled up is really important because when you decide to make big changes, you need a community that supports that, right? Now, please don't start going off the deep end, y'all. Okay? But if you want to pack up your hobo stick and run away from home, pack up your hobo stick and run away from home. If you want to stay where you are, but you want to change everything about your life, stay where you are and change everything about your life. If you want to write the novel, write the novel. If you want to record the music, record the music. You want to learn how to crochet? I don't know what you're waiting for, right? There's so many things that we've put off because we survive only. And in a place of looking towards the rest of the year, I want you to think, how am I going to be living and thriving come October? How am I going to be living and thriving and in community with people who are helping me live and thrive come October? Because now is the time to start planting those seeds, planting those crops to make sure that they will yield a good harvest. And then you can't just stop at the planting, right? Then you got to have a plan for cultivation, for weed control. But we'll talk about a lot of those things as we move forward into the year. But right now, we've come out of March. We're into April. The sun is out more and more every day. The days are getting longer. Sunset is getting longer. Later in the day, we've come through the dreaded daylight savings, right? We've all done the what time is it dance now, and it's over. And now we're throwing open our windows and we're letting some sunshine come in. And we're looking at the twilight at 7 as opposed to at 4. And we're excited because the sky is still slightly light enough to see the tops of the buildings, right? So the world has decided, the world is waking up in the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere, it's starting to go to sleep, starting to settle down, starting to put its PJs on. But in the northern hemisphere, it started to change into some shorts. Sleepless, sleepless, right? And so as the world shifts and starts to wake up, it's in preparation for what it's going to be doing. Because the world will be wild in October. We'll all be hot and cranky because it'll have been hot, and we'll be in the heat. But we'll also be eating fabulously wonderful fruits because they will be in season and they will taste amazing. They'll be at their peak ripeness. I'm dragging this garden theme all the way through. So as the world is shaking off its pajamas and getting ready to put its shorts on in preparation for all that it intends to do for the next year, I think that we can follow that rhythm and allow ourselves this time to start thinking, okay, here's where I intend to be come June. That's in April, May, June. And here's where I intend to be in October. Notice I didn't say September. Okay. October. Two markers that are pretty good, right? So June is going to be the beginning of summer, right? The beginning of summer. And so as we go into the beginning of summer, where do you want to be? Where do you want to see beginning to peek up into through the soil that you worked so diligently on for the next 3 months? What flower do you want to see beginning to bloom in all of its glory? I can't wait for June, especially because in the Midwest we have honeysuckle and it smells amazing. But what is it that your life can begin to smell like and to begin to look like in just 3 short months? Because the last thing I'm going to say, which is what I've said for a couple times, I'm going to keep saying it, is that the quality of your time has now shifted. When the world starts to shift, so should we. And the quality of time is shifting. And the time for planning and thinking and cogitating and navel gazing and wondering, that ended in winter. It is now spring. It is time to plant, cultivate, and prepare so that comes summer and early fall, we're ready to rock and roll. Whatever that looks like for you, you're ready to do it. All right, I gotta go. I said 30 minutes. I'm going to keep it at 30 minutes. Thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate you. Welcome back from spring break. The kids are back in school. I'm back to work teaching, and we'll be back every Tuesday for tea break. And I can't wait to see you. Thank you so much for your time, effort, and attention. I greatly appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all next week. Take care and bye.